9:04. Meeting come to order. Let's go ahead and start with the invocation. Thank you, sir.
Go with me in prayer. Heavenly Father, Lord, we come to say thank you for another day. Father God, we ask that you would grant the men and women in this meeting wisdom for the decisions that need to be made. Pray, Father God, that you would continue to guide us in all things by your Spirit. Pray that you'd keep us humble and give you all the glory for all your blessings, Father God. In Jesus' name, pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Join me in the Texas pledge, please. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. At this time, let's go ahead and have a roll call, Elias.
Jerry Garcia, Chairman.
Here.
Luis Elizondo, Vice Chairman.
Present.
Leo Gonzalez, Secretary.
Here.
Robert Adler.
Yes, here.
Armando Chapa. Here. Gabrielle Hillfolk. Rex Kennison. Butch Poole.
Here.
Remote. Kevin Kieschnick.
Here.
Ronnie Canales.
Here.
Don Cosby.
Here.
Tom Weed.
Here.
Robert Moffett.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you so much, Elias. Excuse me. Is there any public comment?
No.
Seeing none, we'll go on to item number 6, the discussion or action on the consent agenda. Approval of the March 10th, 2021 regular meeting, approval of the May 2021 litigation report, approval of the March and April 2021 disbursements, the fund financial statement on April 2021, and section 25.25 correction of appraisal roll notice. Unless we want to separate one for discussion, I'd entertain a motion to approve all as presented previously.
Second.
Mr. Chapa makes a motion to approve it. Mr. Kieschnick seconds it. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Let's go ahead and go on to item number 7, discussion or action related to the approval of the 2020 financial audit. If you go to your tab on number 7, I'm going to go ahead and go back to Elias on this one, unless you want me to do it, Elias. It's you.
I'm going to give a forwarding comment, then I'm going to introduce you to our auditor.
Good. Thank you.
So section 6.063 of the Texas Property Code requires the district to have an annual financial audit. And today, Tommy Straley from the same firm that's been doing it, Galvin Straley Morales Company, did the audit, but he's unable to be here today to present it. So David Morales' partner is going to present you with the audit. It's a packet in front of you. It looks like this. David will walk you through and give you kind of the highlights unless you want me to do it. Okay. So David Morales.
Thank you, Elias. Good morning, Mr. Morales.
Good morning. How you doing?
Fine, sir. Thank you.
Well, Tommy is semi-retired, so he gets to do the fun stuff, which is travel. So he lets me come and do some of the audit presentations. So if you guys will take a look inside your package, where it has our letterhead, it's like 2 pages in. This is what the board has hired my firm to do, is to give an opinion on the financial statements for the fiscal year end, which in your case is December 31st, 2020. It talks about what an independent audit is. It talks about management responsibility for the audit. And then at the toward the bottom there, that last paragraph that talks about, or second to last paragraph, talks about audit responsibility is to express an opinion on those financial statements based on our audit procedures. Then if you turn over to the next page, top 1/3 of the page there, we issue our opinion. And it states, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position in the Nueces County Appraisal District as of December 31st, 2020. That's an unmodified opinion. There was nothing during our testing or any of our procedures that would cause us to modify it. Starting on page 3 is management's discussion analysis. Exactly what it says, management's discussion analysis. This gives management an opportunity to put some information into the financial statement package related to some of the financial highlights, overview of the financial statements, give the reader some information in a narrative format. One thing Of note, though, is all the financial numbers that are in this financial discussion analysis are consistent with the audit report. So there's nothing that management is saying one thing and we're saying another number. So all the information in that management discussion analysis is consistent with the audited numbers. All right, well, let's go ahead and look at some of the numbers. So if you turn over to page 12, this is the balance sheet / statement of net position. You guys are more familiar with the general fund, the first column there. The second column is adjustments. Basically, what the second column does is it adds things such as a self-insurance fund and also the conversion to a full accrual. You guys are on a modified accrual. So that column 2 basically gets that self-insurance fund and then also the conversion accrual adjustment. So we're going to concentrate on the general fund because, again, that's what you guys basically do your budgeting and everything on. So we'll take a look at the general fund. If you notice your first line item there in that first column there, your cash is $5.3 million. Just as a perspective, in 2019, that balance was $5.1 million. So your cash position has actually increased to 5.3 as opposed to 5.1 the previous fiscal year. Moving down the page, you have some receivables that are noted on page 28. We'll talk about those in a second. $274,000. Prepaid expenses, total assets of $5,840,000 as of the end of December 31st. Then toward the next section is your liabilities. You have some compensated absences, which is a big number. Then you have accounts payable in the normal course of business. Then toward the bottom there, you have your fund balance. And the vast majority of your fund balance of $2.8 million is committed. $2.5 million is committed, and that's detailed on page 29, and we'll kind of talk about that in a second. So the total liability for fund balance at the end of the year are $5,840,000. So again, that's a snapshot of where the district was at the end of December. Turning over to the next page, this shows you revenues and expenses that flowed through the district during the fiscal year. And again, we're going to concentrate on the general fund balance or the general fund column. Taxing unit revenues were $8.4 million. Again, as a perspective, in 2019, that number was $8,175,000. So actually, your taxing unit revenue went up to 8.4 as opposed to 8.175 the previous fiscal year. Moving down toward expenditures, you have personnel services. That's basically your salaries of $5.2 million, and that's detailed on page 41. Then your next line item of significance is your professional services of $1.8 million, and that did increase from the previous year. Expenses under professional services were $1.642 the previous fiscal year. That's detailed on page 41, and we'll talk about that again in a second. So you take your revenues, subtract out those expenses. You have your overall, which is 4 line items from the bottom, excess revenues over resources. Basically, that means you brought in more revenue, earned more revenue than you incurred expenses running the district for the fiscal year by $538,000. All right, the next page, just briefly, just to let you know, this is we talked about the internal service self-insurance. That's detailed there. We just put that in there so you can see what the balance was as of that year or end of the year. And then the next page shows the overall revenues and expenses related to that internal service fund. Starting on page 17 is the notes of the financial statements. And what the notes do is give the reader some initial information about some of the numbers, some of the accounting policies and procedures that the district uses. As of, for instance, turn over to page 24. And I talked about the conversion from modified accrual to full accrual. Well, if the reader wanted to know, okay, what's exactly the difference between the fund balance, the balance sheet as opposed to the net assets, you can take a look in there, and it shows basically how you get from a modified accrual to a full accrual by adding in internal service fund, your capital assets, etc. And then also the next page shows how the revenues converted from your modified accrual to full accrual there. So it basically gives you a walkthrough to get from point A to point B. Last thing I want to talk about on page 20, well, a couple things. Page 28, we talked about your receivables. Well, if a reader wanted to know, well, what makes up that receivable, you can go to page 28 at the top of the page, receivables, and show, you have renditions, assessments, and vendor receivables of $274,000. So again, it just gives the reader some additional information about the numbers. Also, your capital assets are toward the middle of the page there. If a reader wanted to know, well, I know we have capital assets, but what's the breakdown? They could go to that middle of the page there and see what the balance was for those furniture and fixtures, vehicles, etc. At the beginning of the year, what changed during the year, and then what the ending balance was at the end of the year. So again, it just gives the reader some additional information. The last thing I want to talk about on page 41, the very last page of the report. You know, I talked about the changes in some of those expenses. Well, you can take a look here on this page 41 and actually see the functional expenses as opposed to the 10,000 feet expenses. You can look at personal services, you know, some of it payroll taxes, employee benefits of 1.3, salaries of 3.9. So again, it just gives the reader some additional information. Similar to your supplies and operating expenses is detailed there. And then at the very bottom, your professional services is broken down by those functional bases. So just to give you some additional information as to the overall cost of the district during the year. That's all I have as far as a presentation. I know you guys were provided this report, I think earlier, maybe today. Friday. Okay. So if you guys have any specific questions related to that, I'll try to go and answer those.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Morales?
I do, the unspendable, the government fund prepaid expense, maybe it's more for Elias. What, I don't remember, what is that?
What page are you referring to?
Page
No,
12.
29, or page 29, or on page 12, you mentioned it too. It's the unspendable, 177,000.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so if you look at the very top, the third item down, prepaid expenses.
Yeah.
Those are things that we paid ahead of the fiscal year. We had to use last year's cash to pay it because it's going to benefit this year. Like the insurance policies, everything had to be paid early.
It was insurance because that was what I had in mind. It was insurance.
Part of it's insurance and part of it is a pictometry bill that we had paid last year, but it's really budgeted for this year and it's not going to benefit us until this year and the next year. So we paid those things early. That's why it's called unspendable, because we have to
Yeah,
use
I
rubber
just
spelling
didn't
if we
know
used
where
it.
it was going to. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Morales? Thank you, Gabriela. In that case, do we need a motion, Elias, to accept the, Mr. Morales is waving his head.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
I guess you're waiting on a check. Is that the deal?
No, sir.
No, okay.
Well, we would appreciate that as well, but,
I'll go ahead and accept the motion to approve the financial report, for the appraisal district. Gabriela makes a motion.
Second.
Leo seconds it. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote aye. Opposed? Mr. Morales, thank you for your
thank you guys.
presentation.
Appreciate it.
I'll email you.
All right. With that, let's go ahead and go on to item number 8. The discussion or action related to the GASB 5-4 designation of funds. And when I was looking at that particular item, Elias, that Irene sent us last week, I was hoping that you could really concise that and make it to where we could understand, at least to where I could understand.
Sure.
Okay, other than that, just, it's your deal.
Okay, so Gabriela's question just now on that fund balance, those designations, what we do is the district has cash at the end of the year, and normally the way appraisal district laws work, every penny that we have that we didn't spend, it has to go back to the entities. Okay, what we have is an exception where we can, or a mechanism for keeping that money and then designating it for certain purposes. So that's what GASB 54 is. We call it GASB 54, but basically it's for designating that money. What David was just presenting said that we have a fund balance of $2,871,100. And so that's here on the balance sheet. And Gabrielle was just asking about the unspendable part of that. And then of course, there's the rest. This is the details of that. Board has to adopt it. The staff can't just do it. We have to run it through the governing board. So with that said, on tab 8, here's a breakdown of where it was last year, the changes that took place during the year because we had net income, if you will, and then where it is right now. What I'm asking you to do is just either concur or make changes, but let me tell you what we have on the table right now. So we have on tab 8, I'll get over here so the microphone can hear me. So tab 8, the first column is where we were in each of those categories. We have to put them into one of 5 categories. Where we were at the end of 2019, all the stuff that happened during the year with the litigation fund and in net income and where the money went and the unspendable, and then where it is right now. So this is a breakdown of what's in the audit. So let me start from the top and come down. Unspendable, that's the prepaid things where we have to spend money in one year to prepay something for the next year. So it started at 36,000 and we increased it by 140,183, and that was because of a pictometry payment that we had to make last year that really doesn't benefit us till this year. So because the funds were used, we have to encumber some of our equity to show that. So it went from 36,000 last year to 177,038 this year. Okay. The next one is committed. This is what I call board money. This is stuff that past boards and this board have designated for the use of that fund. It's in the committed category. Staff cannot override you. Once you put it here, we have to come back to you in order to spend it. So we had all these categories. Part of this is the changes that took place during the year, and part of this is I'm cleaning it up a little bit to condense it. So the building maintenance started at 100,000. We made no changes to it. Remember, we talked about this in November. We adopted a resolution for it. And so this is the fruits of that. So it stayed at 100. There were no changes. The next two are virtually the same thing. They were just adopted at two different points in time. The capital acquisitions and the capital improvements, they were in different years. They have accumulated, the first one accumulated 386,000, and the capital improvements had accumulated 135,000. What I'm doing in the next column is combining them. I'm subtracting out of the capital improvements the 135 and moving it up a line. So we have one capital acquisitions instead of two separate ones, totaling 521,893. No change.
That's why I was getting confused, Elias. It was, what happened here?
Yeah, it's a bunch of numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just combining them. I'm collapsing them into one line item.
Okay.
So same total, just one line instead of two, 521,000. The next one down is the litigation fund. At the end of 2019, we had 990,917 in that fund. We added 500,000 in the budget. We took out, I think it was $303,000 worth of expenses that were spent during 2020. So that left 197,881 to add to the 990 that we started the year with. We end the year with 1,188,738 in that line item. And that can only be used for litigation fund activities. And then same thing on the operating reserve. All I'm doing is merging the operating reserve and the emergency cash flow reserve into one. So you'll see 425,000 of the emergency cash flow is coming out of that and going up into the operating reserve along with any other net income. So that ends the year at 774,371. So what happens with all of this at the end of the year, the way it all shook out, we have a building maintenance reserve, 100,000, capital acquisition reserve, 521,893, litigation fund, 1,188,798, and one operating reserve, 774,371, for a total of 2,585,062 in committed money. Okay. The next category, this is what I call chief appraiser money. Originally, back in 2019, we asked for and got from you 50,000 for consulting that was going to take place, either personnel, IT. It was just consulting pot of money for some unforeseen things that came up. At the time, it was something with the server, and we weren't sure. I think it's a long story, but we asked for 50,000. Turns out we never used it. Then COVID hit, and we said, "Oh, we better hang on to this." And then we had the submerged land appraisals. We ended up doing that with budget money, not this money. We found it in the budget. So the 59,000 was still sitting there. Then in early 2020, we came to you and said, hey, can we take the 109,000 and turn it into like a COVID reserve? Because we didn't know where all that was going. You know, we had to buy temperature taking machine. We had to buy PPE. It was just ripple effects all over the place. So we asked for the 109. It turns out we were able to absorb all those expenses in last year's budget and just find it in the budget. So this is still sitting here, but we don't know where this is all going to end. So we don't foresee anything. So we just thought we would grab it and turn the whole 109,000 into anything related to COVID or any disruptions related to COVID. So it's still sitting there, but we went ahead and preserved it. If you don't want us to have that, that's fine. We can move it into the committed category, but we're asking you to leave it the way it is right now, just in case something else comes up. So we have the non-spendable, 177,000, the committed, 2.5 million, and the assigned, 109,000. Notice there's nothing unassigned. Part of that is because we have a use for all this money. It's all spoken for. We don't want to put a financial statement out there that just says, unassigned some dollars because it makes it look like there's money sitting on the floor. And we don't want to present that because it's not a true picture of what's going on. So we have zero there. Everything is spoken for. So it totals 2,871,100, which is the exact fund balance that we ended 2020 with. Does that make more sense? And we're just asking you basically to ratify this. It's in compliance with the resolution that you signed back in November, but we were using estimated numbers. Now we have final numbers, so we're asking you to bless, if you will, this.
Yes, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
The assigned
Mhm.
is now basically you're pushing the 109,000 to COVID related, right?
Yes, that's what we did in
So
November.
I don't quite understand it because we're basically saying we need it now for COVID. When really, I mean, your expenses, if there had been a lot of them, would have been last year, right?
Correct. Mhm.
So if you say it's assigned, I have no problem with leaving it as assigned. I just don't think the description is accurate. Because before we had 50,000 and 59 for consulting and submerged,
Mhm.
now we're pushing all into COVID, which we really probably don't need at all. Or
We don't
just a
know.
fraction,
Yeah.
right? So I just have a little bit of a problem with the assignment description on that.
Okay. Yeah,
Because if you say it's consulting, if you guys say we need a computer consulting or anything else, as we did before, it makes
Uh-huh.
sense. Otherwise, it looks like we're dedicating it to something which
Mhm.
is already costing less this year probably than it should have last year.
Right. The reason I left it and the reason it's coming to you now is so that we can do exactly what you're talking about, changing it if you want. I have to stick with the last resolution that was signed, which it was COVID. Now is the time to make the changes. We can call it something else.
The
Doesn't matter.
only question that I have something along similar, only I don't have a problem with it being labeled as a COVID-19 because we do not know where it's going to end. Hopefully it has ended. I agree with you, Gabriela. But my question was on the submerged land appraisals. We're not done with that yet, are we?
Well, I think Don can probably speak to it.
We are done with
We're
it,
done,
Don?
we're done with that, yeah.
Okay,
We've already received the report, we
okay.
put it in place.
Okay, that was the only question I have. I don't want to get caught up in that the COVID was going to limit our ability to transfer funds into the submerged land issue or any of those, but yeah, but if those are already taken care of, that was my question.
Right, we absorbed that in the last year's
Okay,
budget.
okay, so this COVID-19 then expenditure, board members would be more like just an assignment, a temp assignment to see where it's going to go. Is that correct?
Well, that was where it was last time we visited it.
I see.
I just don't like the description as it is, because right now we are assigning it to COVID, but we have had COVID money before that wasn't used at all for a year where we really should have needed it for COVID maybe, if at all, if it was applicable. Because it definitely was worse last year than it is now, you know?
Yes, ma'am.
So now we are assigning more money to COVID.
But let me ask you, did some, I certainly understand what you're saying. But do we have the ability, board members, and by that I'm addressing you, Elias.
Okay.
That we have the ability to move monies around if we needed to and not have to be limited on the COVID-19 expenditure?
You mean within this or
Yes.
within the existing budget?
No.
Within this, you can do whatever you want.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll update the resolution and have you sign it then, but
Okay.
whatever you want to do with this, what this is, let me make it a little bit more English. Committed as board money, assigned as chief appraiser money. What, at the time, we gave this to the chief appraiser, he just had me dig around in the
Right,
budget for
right,
the expense
right.
that we absorbed. Because we had some things like security, the seasonal security, because the public wasn't coming in, we didn't have them. So we were using budget money to offset, it's like a
Okay.
shell game. So we didn't touch this.
Okay.
Okay. So if you want to leave it as chief appraiser money, we can call it something else like unforeseen needs if they should arise.
I'd rather not limit ourselves to the COVID-19 picture.
That's fine. So we can call it something else.
So we could, the board members, do we have any suggestions of what we could label it as?
Are we saying that we would leave it under the discretion of the appraisal district manager
That's what we're saying right now. This is what the existing resolution.
Just title it different?
We can title it something different. We can change the parameters of it. We can call it unforeseen needs. We can call it consulting. We can call it whatever we want.
Right.
But basically, if you want to take it out of that category and move it up,
I would recommend going to building. I would recommend going to building maintenance, especially if we need to do some things to reopen the appraisal district.
Well, before LA had just a really interesting perspective. Go ahead. Elaine.
Just an emergency fund for whatever we.
Which sort of coattails with what you
Yeah,
said.
yeah.
Right? And we could, I think at that point, board members said we'd have the discretion to freely move monies around, which is really what I would feel more comfortable doing. That way we would have been hamstrung with one particular title. I know that's antique thinking, but it just,
no, it's exactly why it's coming to you. That's exactly it.
okay.
So, but this is just what it looks like right
You can
now,
put it in
and then you
your
can make any
operating
changes.
reserve. You can put in your operating reserve and not
Are
be
you
hand
recommending
tied.
that we move that category up to the committee
What I'm suggesting,
to where we would have authority?
yes, sir.
Exactly, otherwise they have
Yes,
to-
Instead of
yes.
leaving it under assigned.
Yes, to where we would have the authority, Armando, but have the ability to where we wouldn't be hamstrung
Yeah,
on
I
that.
understand.
So how does the board feel about that? Is that
Think it'd be a
okay with
wise
y'all?
move.
Be okay with that?
So now let's find, we could title this, Butch, do you have any questions while I'm looking at you?
I think we move it into
Operating
a
reserves.
discretionary fund, like you're saying, an emergency fund.
Yeah.
I like the idea of using it to
Me too.
reopen the
Me too.
It's a
the
general.
district.
Yeah, just like a general fund kind of thing. Yes, sir,
Okay.
Ronnie?
Suggest that you leave it like you're going in that direction. But normally we would probably put it either in insurance, healthcare, if we need to because of an emergency, or better yet, our legal fund, our normal legal budget fund, where we normally come up with a shortfall at the end of the year. We normally look in the budget to see what we can get other monies to make up for those overruns that we have during the year.
But let me ask you a question, Ron.
Yes, sir.
Being the devil's advocate at this point, what we could do is if it was under the discretion of the board, then that presentation could be made to us and we would be willing at that point to go ahead and designate that.
I think your operating reserve would be the best appropriate place to put this for the time being.
I would like to leave the discretion of the expenditures to our board. And at that,
Move that up there.
and then go ahead and if Tommy needed some funds or Ronnie, you needed some funds
Comfortable.
for whatever, yeah, whatever, your raise for, or your decrease, then we'd have more money in the account. And so, so anyway, what? would
All
be
those in
the-
favor of a
yeah.
decrease?
So we could have, let's say we label it, operating expense?
I'd make a motion to move it to operating reserve.
We have operating reserve.
Okay, hold on. Mondo,
Well, as Kevin mentioned, we have operating reserve category already.
Okay.
Already, yeah.
okay, what could, emergency funds or?
We could move it into
But
that.
we could move it into
category.
that operating reserve.
Then we are.
That's
You can
true.
Pull anything out of operating.
Yeah, we could move it into operating reserve. We'd still have discretion over that money, wouldn't we, Elias?
Yeah.
Yes, you have discretion over
Oh,
all this.
Okay, well then it would be my opinion that we could move this money into the operating reserve
Okay.
and we could go with something like that. How does that sound?
That's it. We agree.
Okay, can I have a motion to that effect,
I
please?
made that motion.
Kevin Keesnix makes that motion. Second? Second by Gabriela. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote aye. Opposed? Let the record show that it passes unanimously. Thank you so very much for that, Elias.
Sure. Then
Board,
We'll
I
make the
appreciate it.
changes and have you sign the new resolution.
So
Yes, sir. Okay,
it'd be the resolution that would be amended, right?
Yeah, it's right here. I'll just make a change to it and then it can be executed. It's got to be signed by the chair and the secretary. Yeah, and then this can be changed at any time. We just put it on the agenda. If you want
Right.
to ever change it, we'll put, because you see it twice a year, November with estimates and then after the audit with the final numbers. Anytime. You want it on the agenda, we stick it on the agenda, change it any way you want.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so 0 is signed. Sorry. 0 is signed. No chief appraiser.
All right, let's go ahead and go on to item number 9. Discussion or action related to the approval of the appraisal district's first quarter investment report, Elias.
Okay, so that's in tab 9, and I'll hit the highlights. The average portfolio for the quarter, the first quarter of 2021, was 4.7 million, because as you know, we get our money from the entities at the beginning of the quarter, spend it down, and then new money comes in at the end of the quarter for the next quarter, because they pay it before the quarter begins. So it averaged 4.7 million, and it earned overall, the whole portfolio earned, get this, 0.08%. Isn't that pathetic?
Wow.
0.08%.
Wow.
Don't spend it all on the voice.
I know. It's the equivalent of $962 through a combination of interest earned and fees saved at the bank, because as the market rates go down, it makes more sense to keep it in the bank and get paid what I call funny money, paper money, monopoly money, toward fees, so that we don't have to pay $1,000 worth of fees. So, because they're paying us more funny money than we are getting in cash anywhere else.
Right.
So we're saving the fees. So
Does
that's
anyone
cash.
have any questions for Elias on that? We all understand how that's working, right? And there's guarantees by the banks and
Mhm.
all these other kind of things. So, okay, let's move on, Elias.
Okay, so it earned 0.08%, the equivalent of $962. But if you look at the third page in, the 962 we got in the middle column, that's where we earned what this money earned for us. The bank money at Frost Bank earned us for the whole quarter $45 in cash. Okay, yeah.
Did
But
the
notice
check
the
clear?
high balance that I have to keep there. 1.4 million, almost 1.5, to offset fees, so that we don't have to cut a check for the
Right.
fees for $1,000,
Right.
which is, or I'm sorry, for $539, which is the next line. So that's cash we did not have to lay out. So money saved is money earned. And then over in text pool, which is my next best option, there's kind of a tipping point. Once we've made up our fees, it no longer makes sense to keep the money in the bank. So we have to move it over to text pool after that. So we only earn $379 over there. So we earn 0.08% through investing it as best we can within our limits, versus a benchmark, which is the 3 months treasury, which is even lower than what we're able to earn, because the text pool, the big reason for that is the text pool is like a big portfolio of all kinds of investments from the past when those were earning more. And so those are slowly running out and being replaced with lower yielding investments. So right now we're getting a little ahead of them, but then when the yields start going up, we're going to trail that. We'll be behind our benchmark as those old securities work their way out.
If it makes y'all feel any better, I just made a transfer last month of interest from one of our accounts for 3 cents to the county.
That was your salary, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. It feels like it on a regular basis, trust me. So,
3 cents, wow.
Wow, crazy. Okay,
Not much else to report. I mean, it's not a very exciting report.
all right, so can we have a motion to approve the investment report from Elias? LA makes a motion to approve it, and Leo makes a motion to second it. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote aye. Opposed? Let the record show it passes unanimously. Thank you. The discussion of the 2021 budget calendar, Elias.
Tab 10. And this just is a forward-looking. Next month, we're going to bring you a draft of the budget. In July, we're going to have a public hearing. And then hopefully you'll adopt it in August, so that we can get it out to the entities so they know how much estimated that they have to drop in their budgets to pay for the district. This allows for a 1-month delay, just in case. We have to have it adopted by September 15th. This calendar allows for 1-month delay should anything get delayed. But this is our plan right now for the
Okay.
budget adoption.
Okay.
And you don't have to take any actions, just for your information.
Right.
And I think the Elias show is over now. Thank you.
All right. At this stage, thank you so much, Elias. Let's go ahead and we'll move into executive session pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, Government Code 551.071. Consultation with attorneys. Mr. Wheat.
Good morning, everybody. It is so good for me to see you. I tell you, what, it's been a long 14 months. No problems. So we're in good shape there, and the ARB has completed all of its training. So starting Monday, they go to work. And if there's no questions, I'm done.
The new chair of the ARB,
I think that's preliminary.
oh, we still don't
preliminary.
have that then?
Well, I'm gonna
We're gonna
let
talk
that,
in closed session about
Yeah.
that.
Oh, okay. All right, good. All right, is that your report, Mr. Moffett?
that's it.
Thank you so very much, sir.
Y'all be safe.
Yes, hold on, Mr. Wheat.
We are asking technically, PLO contract expired April 11th. And we want to extend his contract to the end of this year.
Oh, that sounds perfect. As far as, is everyone okay with that, Mr. Moppin? How do you feel about that?
Well, I will be departing at the end of certification.
July 25th. Or July 25th is normal for certification, but if we run into something else, that could be after the 25th of July.
Okay, I'm getting two answers here.
We
So-
can talk about the details in closed session. It's one of the items on there, but I can explain all that.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. So,
We don't need any action right
So-
now.
Not
Tom,
right
what-
now.
what-
No, he's
what-
just giving the usual report.
okay. So then, at this point, Tom, we're going to be able to speak about this during closed session. Mr. Moppin, thank you so very much for your service, sir. We really appreciate it. You've been an excellent role model. Thank you.
See you next month.
Yes, sir. God willing.
Thank you.
It is now 10:40, and let the meeting get back open, please. Thank you, Ron. And Mr. Andrew, thank you for the candies. Really appreciate it. I sure have missed you. Where- But where's the bananas?
Yeah.
Next month.
Bring an apple next time.
Yeah, bring strawberries, bring something. I mean, come on. All right, the meeting is now open back up. And by the way, I forgot to say good morning to Terry. Terry, good morning.
Good morning.
And of course, Butch, it's good to see your bearded face this morning. And so with that, let's go
Thank
ahead and discuss what was relative in the executive session. And with that, we'll open that up to Mr. Adler on the TLO extension contract for Mr. Maupin. Mr. Adler makes a motion to approve the TLO contract to Mr. Maupin through January the 31st.
July.
I'm sorry, July 31st
21.
of 2021. And
I'll second that.
Leo seconds that. Thank you for that. Do we have any discussion on that? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show it passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Adler, Leo, and thank you, Mr. Maupin. The next item that we are going to talk about is the contract extension for Tom Wheat. And
I move that we extend Mr. Wheat's contract 1 year through December 21st, 2022.
that Armando Chapa makes that motion. Can I have a second, please?
I second.
L.A. Elizondo seconds that motion. Is there any discussion on that? All in favor, vote aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you very much, Board. Let the record show that it passes unanimously. Next item that we want to talk about would be the contingency contract for the following year.
Make a motion for a 1-year arrangement as a consultant ending in December 31st of 2023, as proposed in the letter.
The consultant contract is, the motion is made
I'll
by
second.
Gabriela. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Kevin Keechnik seconds that contract. Is there any discussion? All in favor, vote aye.
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 Opposed? Let the record show that it passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Board. I truly appreciate it. And the smooth transition. Let's go ahead and go to the Chief Appraiser's report, Mr. Canales.
We've got a long list of some of the things that we're doing. I'll make it short. Basically, reappraisal notices, most of the notices have gone out. We've got a total of about 170,000 that should be going out probably by the end of this month. Our preliminary values were delivered to all the entities through email on the 30th of April. And like I had said earlier, most of our numbers, commercial and real estate numbers, without the refineries are pretty much on the upside. So we are, and we've been having a lot of phone calls in reference to that. It's the time now between April and July when the staff is pretty much busy, either returning phone calls or emails, et cetera, because of the protest values that people are calling for. Again, I'll reemphasize the fact that we are close to the public, but make it very clear the staff, entire staff is in the office working diligently. We also have, during this time of the year, we have some phone bankers. There are a total of about maybe 17 to 20 people that we work part-time basis, 4 hours a day, 20 hours a week. And all they're doing is either scanning material that we have, or basic is to answer all the phone calls. And then those phone calls will be directed to the appraiser, whether it's commercial, real estate, personal property, land, commercial, et cetera. As far as the homestead audit, it's still it's still ongoing. Haven't really gotten a lot of numbers yet, but we anticipate that that'll start pretty soon to get some numbers on the number of people that have more than food exemption, either here in Nueces County or other parts of the United States.
But Paul's handling that, isn't he, Ronnie?
Yes.
Yes.
Alan Lombard is handling that. And the law is that you're only allowed one exemption
Right.
in wherever you might be. In other words, in years past, it used to be that if you're in California, you had an exemption there, you can have an exemption here. In Texas, where the law changed about 3-4 years ago to where now you're only entitled to one, right? That'll clean out our records to make sure they will be responsible for handling any kind of taxpayer that has concerns about its, having an exemption that should not be having the exemption. It's a turnkey operation. They take care of all that. And then at the end of the day, we'll find out what numbers we will get. And then hopefully by the next meeting, I'll have something better for you on that issue.
Great.
As far as our mobile offices that were suspended. In case you don't know, or actually traditionally, since I've been here, starting in the year 2012 or 2013, I forgot, we've always had 3 Saturdays in a row in the month of April. When we go to either, well, one would be Port Aransas for Saturday. Following Saturday would be either in Calhoun or Robstown. And the last Saturday would be either in Flower Bluff or the island, one of the two. But because of COVID last year and this year, we have not been able to do that. Hopefully, if everything turns out better, next year we can start that process again. We had been talking about maybe on the parking lot update. We're still with Mama Mia's, we're still doing that. There could be a buyer, just so y'all know, but we haven't finalized that yet. I do know the potential buyer, and we also did mention that that's what we do. We during that year. And I think that if the buyer does go through with the sale, then perhaps we will be doing the same thing again, but with a different person. Anyway, saying that, and then we're also looking at maybe upgrading the parking lot between the two buildings here, this side over here. In there, probably to redo it completely. The one in the back is still in very good shape. As far as the landscaping and things like that, we're still waiting to see what plants are gonna make it, for sure, and which ones are not. And once we have some people coming in to take care of that issue, once they give us direction as to what they can and cannot do, because eventually some of those hedges are gonna be gone. Most of your cenizo or your sage, they've done real well. They were not affected at all. Your live oak trees, your oak trees, they're doing very well. You've got a couple of trees inside those planters, those are good. As you see those hedges that are completely brown, dark brown, we're beginning to see some sprouts coming up there. So again, I said, we're gonna look at it in case we have to replace that, that's what we'll do. I don't want to get the city code people coming in and reminding us that we have to take care of that issue. Just so you know, we're looking at that to make sure we take care of that. In the month of August 25th to the 27th, we'll have the ad valorem classes, seminar in San Antonio. If any of y'all want to go, please let us know. Then after that, we'll also have it August 29th through September 1st, the TAAO and ICT a conference as well. And I think that one's in Austin, the other one's in San Antonio. So it'll be back-to-back conferences. If either anybody wants to go, please let us know so we can make the arrangements for you guys to be there as well. Okay? Other than that, staff is working very hard on the phones and on the emails, e-files, to make sure that we respond to the taxpayers, just like we did last year. We've been very fortunate that most of this year, we've been kind of COVID-free. We've had some issues with some employees feeling kind of whatever, so those stay home and then they'll come back. So other than that, staff, like I said, is doing very good at what it is that we need to do to keep the office busy and keep the governmental entities busy as well. We've had a couple of issues with the city, but hopefully we can resolve those. It's come to a point where we're requesting any type of records. They're gonna want us to maybe, and they already have, we're gonna into an open records request. That is not normal, but that's their prerogative. We don't do that. I think that if somebody's requesting information from us, we give it to them as soon as we can, which is a 10-day grace period. Tom, is that about right? To turn over information, and that's what we do.
So how did that come about, that new, I mean, that's unusual, right?
It is. And what it is basically is I asked for a copy of the transactions that they're having with Flint Hills. It's the property that they're buying or bought or planning on buying for the desal plant that they want to do out of it. The appraisal came in. All I want is a copy of the appraisal so we can look at the sales that they utilize, so we can use it here. See, because you need to understand that the industrial area that's out there, there's not too many land sales that we have access to.
Right.
Land sales out there have happened maybe 5 years ago.
Right.
That's the last time that we were able to increase. So, when I asked for it, and they were here when we had the meeting, they were complying with it. I went back, waited for a week or two, and then I asked, then they said, well, Miles is saying that we need open records request because it's in the middle of a transaction. I said, well, all I want is a copy of the appraisal. Because the appraiser is gonna give you the list of sales that they use for comps on the property that they're gonna purchase, okay? And that's all we're looking for. We're not looking to see what it is that you're doing. That's normally what happens. So as of last week, we sent the open records request with a certified letter of return receipt to Mr. Zanoni, also City Secretary Rebecca and Miles. And I'm not sure who else we sent it to, but it's return receipt. And the only ones that we sent, done back as of, I think Monday was Mr. Zanoni's. So just to bring you up to date, in case you hear something, that's what it's about, okay?
Thank you.
And it should not be a hush hush thing, and we're not here to expose it, we're just here for our information.
That's all.
That's all it is. Nothing personal or anything like that. Other than that, I want to say thank you for all the stuff that the staff has been through for the last year and a half. And commend them for taking the precautions of being safe and COVID-free. And also for continuing to do the work that we do here. And one more time, I will let you know that we are closed to the public, but staff is working here every day. We're fully staffed. We're not working remotely, and we're not gonna do that, okay? Just so you know. So other than that, you don't have any questions?
Any questions for Ronnie?
Let me know.
At this stage, I'd like to go ahead and thank Ronnie for the constant meetings that you and I have, Ronnie.
Yes.
And going forward with everything that we've gone, and I deeply admire your dedication and staff's dedication, the people that have been working here and have been doing just a yeoman's job. Thank you very much. Neil, you had a question?
I saw Butch raise his hand. I thought he had a question or comment.
I do. What are the plans for reopening to the public?
Right now, we're looking, Butch, at September, the month of September. The reason we're saying that is because, one, the vaccination period is being pretty much successful. But we're looking at a number of 70% of the population of the county being vaccinated by that point. I think they're past the 35% mark right now. And that makes it easier for us to work in the office with taxpayers. Because as they come into the office, we're not going to be asking you if you're vaccinated or not. We won't be requiring you to wear your mask, and we will also get you a temperature check before you come onto the building. Employees here wearing their mask, and they get temperature checked every morning as well. It's a safety issue, and we deal, like I said earlier, we deal with a lot of deadlines. And I don't feel that we should be able to afford to close the office for 2 weeks or more because of quarantine. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. It's a safety issue for us, and it's a health issue as well.
Anything else? Okay. I would also like to ask Terry, do you have anything for the group, Terry? Terry,
You're muted, man.
Terry,
She's still muted.
Yeah.
Is she muted?
Terry.
Yes, she's muted.
Okay,
Okay, now you're ready. Go ahead.
okay. We are ready and excited to come back. We have a full staff. We have 9 regular board members and 7 auxiliaries. So, and everybody's been trained. And I'm pretty sure we've all been vaccinated. At least I know most of us have. And we're excited. We're looking forward to a busy season.
Good luck.
So we're ready. May 17th, we'll be
No
there.
kidding. Thank you so much for what you're doing, Terry. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. We enjoy it. And like I said, we're looking forward to getting started.
Great, thank you. With that, I'd like to thank the board for showing up today. I really appreciate y'all being here, Mr. Adler. It's a pleasure to see you. And LA, not so much, but it's good to see everybody instead of Zoom. Yes, sir, Ronnie.
Before we forget, if y'all have a chance, give Rex a call. He's still under the weather. He's trying to rehab. recoup. He's starting to walk again and starting to do his stuff. He's lost some weight. He's had some very healthy issues, and hopefully he's on his way to recovery. So if you get a chance, give him a holler just to pep him up a little bit. Keep him on the good side instead of the depressed.
You're right. Okay. Anything else for the good of the group here? Let the record show it's 11 o'clock. The meeting is closed. Thank you. Oh, I forgot. Suggested items for next regular board meeting. Yeah.
Update on the search for replacement.
Yeah, we'll just call Ronnie. We'll take care of that. Thank you so much, folks.